The following is a special presentation of the Not Quite Right podcast, in which we discuss, in detail, entries to our erotic flash fiction competition, the Not Quite Right prize for flesh fiction. This episode contains adult themes and is not appropriate for listeners under the age of 18. And Mum, if you're still listening, that's on you.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
Welcome to Not Quite Right. My name's Ed.
And I'm Amanda.
Amanda, it's time to get kinky.
Ooh.
We're here to talk about the kink and taboo category for the Not Quite Right prize for flesh fiction.
Should we get out the fluffy handcuffs? Is that what's required here? Do we need a whip? Should we be dressed in leather at this point?
Well, we do have some relevant items in the prize box.
Mm-hmm.
Could get them out if that's what you want.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure our recipients won't mind if a few of those are used.
Oh. Well, I mean, that is pretty kinky. Well, if the packaging is a little damaged when it arrives at your place, I blame Ed because it's been here this whole time.
So yeah, kink and taboo, an interesting category.
To say the least.
Definitely opened my eyes.
I was going to say eye-opening.
Concepts.
Eye-opening, other things were opening.
Opening all over the place.
I'm really drunk. It's kicked in at it. I'm not sure it's a good time. It's a time.
It's always a good time with Amanda.
I did read that on a bathroom wall one time.
Did you? Oh, did you read it after you wrote it?
I wrote it and then I read it and then I was like, yeah.
So in this episode, we're talking about the kink and taboo category. We'll be talking about the podium, as it were, the third place and the second place story. And we'll be reading out the second place story in full, which will be a lot of fun. That one's on you, I believe, this time around, Amanda.
Once again. And this one cuts a little close to home, but I promise it's not autobiographical.
You promise you didn't actually write this
I didn't
one.
write this one.
Even though it's exactly the story of your life.
Yeah. I just said it's not autobiographical.
Well, but why are you so defensive about it? Well, we'll get to that. So we'll be reading out the second place story, but we won't be reading out the first place story or
that's
revealing
weird,
it.
Isn't it? That's a little bit weird.
It is weird, but the reason we're doing
it's a bit kinky, you might say.
But the reason we're doing this is just to keep everyone on the edge for a little bit longer, give you a taste of some of these stories before we finally release the winners of each categories on you. We unleash them onto you, unload them.
Emit.
That's where you went, emit. That's the sexiest one, isn't it?
I'm
emit
struggling.
all over your face. We're struggling with this introduction today. It's been a few wines.
Yeah, it's really kicked in. We've come to record today.
With good intentions.
We've come today to record all of our category-specific podium episodes, and we've recorded a few now, and, you know, the alcohol is starting to seep into my veins, and I'm enjoying it, but it's coming with consequences.
Yeah. But before we get to the juicy story, let's have a chat with Elise. So Elise was one of our guest judges for Flesh Fiction, and Elise helped judge most of the categories, I guess. She did an amazing job and she really helped.
Absolutely.
And this one in particular, Elise opened our eyes to a lot of interesting stuff.
Again, so much eye-opening going on in this category.
a lot of things that we had no idea about through our sheltered and innocent suburban little lives that we live.
That we claim to live,
So thank you, Elise. So let's speak with Elise now, and we'll come back afterwards to talk about our thoughts about this category. So welcome back, Elise.
Thank you.
And we're here to talk about the kink and taboo category. You mentioned in our earlier discussions that you've got a fair bit of expertise in this area. So do you want to just remind our listeners what your background is?
Yeah, so among many, many other things, my life has been kind of an adventure so far. But I was a dominatrix for many, many years, more than a decade of active doming, not professionally, just for fun and delight. So that made me really excited to read in this category and see what people's interpretations of the prompt was.
Yeah, and something interesting that cropped up for me, and I'm interested in your thoughts, Elise, is the prompt was make the unsexy irresistible. Now, some people might think that some kinks are kind of that already, right? If it's falling outside of what is maybe the norm or what is like an average expectation of what is sexy, that's what a kink is already. So is that something you noticed when you were judging as well?
I did, yes. There were a number of stories where I made a comment like, the only thing I can find unsexy here is this particular person's kink. And to me, that's a little bit troubling, but I feel like it's valid to hold space for that, because if to the writer it's unsexy, then they have kind of met the brief in their own way. As long as the story didn't treat the kink as inherently bad or gross, I didn't really have a problem with that per se, although I think I probably remarked on it every time that I noticed it. But I tried to stay open-minded to it. And I honestly remarked on a lot of things every time.
I love that you're the one who has to be open-minded in this case. That's great.
So we actually said, Elise, that for Amanda and I, this was perhaps our least comfortable category, the one that we most personally didn't resonate with, I guess, and we had to challenge ourselves to overcome some of those preconceptions. Was there anything for you that felt like it went too far or that you had trouble with from a comfort level or from a connection level in terms of subject matter?
In terms of the kink pieces, not so much. When I was doming, there were only a couple of things that I never involved myself in scat, because for me, I couldn't get into that, which is, anything involving poop. But other than that, the only areas that I wouldn't play in were areas where I didn't feel qualified to see to the safety of whatever submissive or submissives I was interacting with. So an example of that would be bullwhips. I don't know if you guys know, but when you crack a bullwhip, the tip of the bullwhip breaks the sound barrier, and that's why it makes that pop. You can do a lot of damage with a bullwhip if you don't know what you're doing. So I was not willing to touch a bullwhip, and like blood play, like anything involving surgical or semi-surgical stuff. But I don't mind reading about those things. And there were certainly stories where I was like, not my kink, but really well rendered. And in fact, later when we talk about my favorite story in this category, there was a big chunk of that in it, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like, I think there were certainly stories where it wasn't my kink, and I'd say probably I'm pretty vanilla in my taste or what have you, but it didn't matter. Like, if you're reading something and it's resonating because the characters are into it, I think that can be quite powerful. It's not a case of you need to share the kink to be able to appreciate the story. I think what authors need to work towards is to have emotional resonance so that we feel empathy for the character, what they're getting, what they want, and they're happy with the outcome of the story. And some stories were very effective with that and some stories not so much. And that's across the spectrum, not just in kink.
So let's get to some call-outs. What were some of your standout story themes and lines?
So for standout themes, one of the things that I really appreciated was some of the stories had a sort of a superficial exploration of kink, and that's not necessarily bad. Like a couple trying something fun out in the bedroom. One of my favorite stories was one of those. It was called Something About Boots.
Biker boots?
Yeah, spiker boots. That was it. Yeah, that was adorable. It was a really, really cute story. So no shade to stories that took that sort of lighter approach, but a lot of the stories that went deeper into the DS dynamics, which is the relationship between the dominant and the submissive, and explored how the power exchange works between those two parties, that got me really excited when I saw that done well. There was a story called Wet to the Touch that was literally about watching paint dry, which is pretty funny.
So good. It's such a great take on the theme.
And the kink in that one was orgasm denial. And it was really, really good interiority in that story. We saw through the sub's eyes, we saw the dom like maintaining that dominant space, but also like keeping track of where the sub was at throughout the scene. And then in addition, we felt the sub's conflict inside of the scene of like loving what was happening and hating what was happening at the same time, and like being miserable and being overjoyed about being miserable. And that's so real and so difficult to capture. So I loved that wherever I saw it.
Is it safe to say, Elise, that you particularly enjoyed stories where the author was sensitive to some of those nuances of consent and the experience of the submissive person in the dynamic as well?
Yes. It is absolutely safe to say that. And the opposite is also true. There was at least one story where the dom in the situation, in the story, does not navigate the unfolding dynamic in a way that I experienced as ethical. I think it was meant to be sexy, but I was reading it thinking like, if a dom doesn't have a really sophisticated understanding in the power exchange, you know, the sub gives away their power and they have the safe word, but sometimes they may not feel fully capable of safe wording when they need to. And so when the dom accepts that responsibility, they also become beholden to the sub. They have a responsibility to make sure that there's always a clear line to consent and that the dom is certain that they're not doing harm beyond the sort of superficial harm that's sought after in that particular scene. And then there were some stories where I would read the story and be like, this dom is not giving any care to the power exchange at all. And so instead of looking like a DS dynamic, it looks like somebody who's grooming someone to be a victim of abuse. It looks like the nascent stage of an abusive relationship. And I've been in one of those. So those are not my favorite things to read about.
Yeah, and you can't help but bring your own context to a story as well when you're judging it.
I just wanted to call out the authors of the two stories that you called out. So Biker Boots was by Simon Clark and Wet to the Touch was by Juliet Reese.
So some memorable stories there. Just on the topic of safe words as well, because I think that's interesting. Ed and I were just setting up our safe word here. We've got, it's more of a safe object. So we've got a green highlighter and a pink highlighter, and the green highlighter is like, keep talking, and the pink highlighter is like too far. So that's where we're at. But a safe word schema or what have you that we saw a few times was the traffic light system. So the red, amber, orange, and green. So is that common in the kink community? Is this something that's sort of popularly understood?
Yes, that's sort of the default. So you can negotiate other safe words. And it also bears noting that oftentimes you need something that's not verbal. Like if you're gagging someone or they're going to be submerged or there's choking or anything like that, you're going to need like a tap pattern. And if their hands are bound and they can't do a tap pattern, then they need to be able to click their tongue. So sometimes you have to think a little more deeply. But generally, especially with people who don't have like a long-standing relationship or haven't spent a lot of time together being kinky, it's good to go with the default of the red and the yellow or amber and then the green, because it's easy to remember even when you're in extremis. Even if you're like screaming or whatever, you can be like yellow, like you're reaching the edge of what I'm comfortable with. So don't stop, but don't go any further.
And it was great reading some of your comments as well, Elise. There were so many stories, especially in this category, where I didn't pick up on anything that was related to, like there were some comments that you left that were talking about the safe word patterns and their use in the story. And I didn't pick up on any of that nuance. So very pleased to have you helping us out in this category, which we really would have struggled with, I think, without having you there.
I also remember a story, Ed, that was talking about voyeurism specifically within a community. And Elise had left a comment suggesting that this was a relatively common thing. You're like, I never knew this was common. I need to move into this community.
I think your comment was like in voyeur communities or exhibitionist communities or something. And I was just thinking, these communities exist?
Yeah.
I can't remember what the specific community
is what
was.
He's saying.
Putting words in my mouth, but I'll allow it.
You'll allow it. Okay. I guess I was surprised overall, and this is across the competition, that maybe it was a little bit more vanilla than I was expecting, like that a lot of people share some pretty common interests and some common turn-ons. And so it was the kink and taboo space where it became more niche, I suppose, although even there wasn't a lot that I was surprised by. So I guess we might think that in kink and taboo, like that BDSM side of things is representative of like a huge chunk of what kink and taboo might be. But of course, we had some of these fringe kind of ideas as well. And we probably eliminated some fringe ideas with our rules of the competition in terms of consent and whatnot. But I guess I'm interested in your thoughts, Elise, on the place of art and expression in writing and these more fringe kind of interests and how they play off against each other.
I think just in its own right, exploring things that might generally be considered to be on the fringe in art is grand. I'm a big fan of it. I like things that are subversive, and I like things that authentically explore, or with some basic working knowledge, explore things that tend to be kind of on the edges of most people's experience. Because then when you read it, you're broadened by that, right? There were, of course, and I know you know what I'm talking about, there were some times that I absolutely ranted because I felt like something wasn't being addressed particularly accurately or thoroughly. I remember I went off about squirting at one point. Sorry about that.
No, that's fascinating. And I think very valid too. And look, we are talking about fiction, and so that's okay. You know, no one's getting hurt. It's fiction. But at the same time, it's very valid to be aware of the concerns that might be present in a real context for these things.
And just on the subject of squirting, we did have a good discussion with Linda Atkins on the long list episode about that. So if you want to know more about squirting and all of the medical details and what causes it, listen to that episode.
That's exciting.
Do you have anything to add, Elise? Do you want to share any insights or knowledge on squirting?
I too have delved fairly deeply into the medical, the biological vehicle by which squirting happens. I have quite a bit of actual experience with squirting. I have taught someone how to squirt who wanted to really badly wanted to be able to do it. So it's something you can learn as a skill.
Is this something we can learn on a podcast or?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But before we go, I want to hear a little bit, Elise, about your book. And you mentioned it on the previous episode, but give us a little insight into what you've written and when it's coming out as well.
So my book is called The Black Cat Detectives. It is the absolute opposite of the kink and taboo category. It is a cozy murder mystery about 3 kittens who have to save their human rescuer by solving a murder she's accused of committing so that they can prevent her from being locked away in the human pound forever. So it's meant to be cute and joyful, and it is coming out on May 26th of this year. And I think I forgot to say before, if you pre-order, there's an email address. You can find it on my website. And if you email me and send me your receipt, I will send you a envelope with stickers and bookmarks and my personal playlist from writing it. And I will absolutely send it anywhere in the world that U.S. Post can be sent to, because I bought a packet of the International Forever stamps. Oh,
that's lovely. So if people are interested, we'll put a link in the show notes for this episode if they're keen to get that package. It's cool. I think, sometimes people need a little break from the stuff that's heavy and hard in the world. And it sounds like this story is lighter and a bit of fun, which I think we could all use. So that's really cool. And so you've written this story under the name Kit Gray.
Yes.
So it's Kit Gray, the Black Cat Detective. So for those who are interested in a bit of cozy mystery, look it up. But we'd like to also share a copy of that book with your top pick for this category, Elise. So who's your top pick?
So my top pick in the kink and taboo category is Sometimes a Dom Has to Get Dirty, which definitely has one of those areas of kink that maybe was a little uncomfortable to read for a lot of people, because this is the one where, I don't know if you remember, where the sub really wants to be immersed in a bathtub full of fetid garbage.
No, I remember that one.
Yeah, and so the unsexy element here was not the sub's desire to have this experience, but rather the fact that for the Dom, it was actively a turnoff, and yet the Dom wanted to provide this experience for her sub. And so she pushed past her discomfort and did it anyway.
And so that story, Sometimes a Dom Has to Get Dirty, is by Grace Kwan. And Grace has actually left us a message about her story, telling us about the origin of the story. So we'll play that as well.
I love that.
Hi, it's Grace from Canada. Sam James, who wrote your third place July story Bin Boy, and I are in a writing group together. I joked his story about a dirty little bin boy could be easily reworked into an entry for Flesh, which is when Carew, our group's chief cheerleader and occasional instigator, jumped in and dared me to write it. And that's how Sometimes a Dom Has to Get Dirty was born. And as Elio J is also in the group, there's an uncredited appearance too of a certain pink mold. Thanks UDLW gang, and thanks Ed and Amanda for this super fun contest. Sorry, Sam.
I love that.
And it was such a sweet, Bin Boy was such a sweet story. Very romantic. All right. Well, thank you, Elise, for sharing your thoughts. And we look forward to talking with you again when we cover the literary erotica category.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
And now Kink and Taboo. We mentioned in our conversation with Elise, it was a bit of a struggle for us. There were lots of new concepts and confronting themes, I guess, for us.
I mean, nothing super surprising, to be honest, for me. It's not like I was, clutching my pearls or anything like that. It was just difficult, I think, for me to connect with this idea of wanting to be degraded. I think is the thing that I struggled to connect with. So not so much like, oh, okay, there's whips and chains and all sorts of stuff like that. Even some darker stuff like being murdered and eaten, being punished like in deeply disturbing ways. That to me just did not surprise me. And I'm not someone who's read or watched 50 Shades of Grey. That made BDSM mainstream, I guess. And it's just not for me.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I think we talked about previously how we found it maybe not difficult to connect with, say, a homoerotic story. When that's not my experience, I didn't find that difficult to connect with, but I found this more difficult to connect with, which is interesting.
Yeah, and you mentioned like whips and chains and stuff, and that's the kind of thing that you think about when you think about kink and BDSM when you're not in that world. And I guess what I found was that we didn't get a whole lot of that. It wasn't that surface level, well, it's just a relationship and there's whips and chains involved. It really wasn't about that. It was much more about, I guess, that power differential for a lot of the cases. Not all of them. There are other aspects of kink and taboo that were represented here, but a lot of the ones that I struggled with were based around this idea of the power differential. Yeah, I found that confronting, and I don't know, for me personally, is not something that I'm into. Like, I view relationships as very much like an equal thing and like a partnership kind of thing. And, you know, I understand this is a different thing. But that's, for me, I found that quite different from what I'm normally used to. And this is not a problem from the perspective of judging this competition.
Yeah.
We try to keep an open mind about what's being portrayed, how effectively it does portray that. Does it tick all the right boxes in terms of consent and like hotness and that kind of thing? But a lot of the time for me, I'm judging them more in the abstract on those merits rather than does this personally do it for me?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that was the case across the stories. And I want to be very clear that this isn't a case of like kink shaming or, you know, it's not that I judged any of these specific kinks as if they were wrong or anything like that. This is not what I'm saying. I mean, I'm open to all of that, and certainly in this competition was open to reading all of that. I guess to me it was just interesting how difficult I found it to connect with these relationships. And look, it's no surprise, right? You know I don't like being told what to do. Although maybe I should relate to the dom in this situation. It's not appealing to me to be in that very different power dynamic in a sexual relationship. However, like, it was still very much possible to tell a very, very sexy story in that way. And I think much like stories in any category, it became about understanding the individual character's desire for that relationship. And if that was really strong, that became easier to connect with, rather than maybe assuming that the reader is on board automatically, that they need to understand this character, what they want, what is appealing to them and what's going to bring them what they need. Yeah. But I think maybe a challenge in this category, and it's probably across other categories as well, but something that just comes to mind now is conflict, right? So in storytelling, we're big fans of conflict. We want escalating conflict throughout a story. That's the middle of the story. And in this case, we're offering 1,500 words instead of, in the Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction, it's 500. There is a lot of time there to build and develop conflict and to have like sort of one thing escalate into another and another. And many, many stories, even in the kink and taboo category where you might feel like there's kind of an inherent conflict, did not deliver story conflict. Yeah. So everybody was on board from the word go. I think it's meaningful to think about in storytelling terms, this push and pull of like a goal that we have, a scene goal or a story goal, and then what is getting in the way of that. And if nothing is getting in the way of that, if it's just two characters have entered into a consensual kind of situation, and even if it's kind of kinky, they're just playing off each other and then it builds to the end. Yeah. That can be not as satisfying as something where we're trying to overcome obstacles, potentially relationship obstacles or obstacles of understanding each other to arrive at a place where everybody's on board with the same goal.
And we did speak about this at length, I think, in the long list episode, but conflict doesn't necessarily mean the two characters are in conflict.
Yeah, it's not an argument necessarily. Yes. Yeah, it's an obstacle.
So look, I agree with that, and I think listen back to the long list episode. We'll talk a little bit more about these ideas, but let's get to the stories. We'll be revealing the names of our third and second place getters, and we'll be reading out the second place getter for this round, which is really exciting. It's a great story.
I'm nervous again. God, I feel like I'm not doing them justice, but
you're doing a great job.
This one is, I'm going to have to just throw my whole self into this one, I feel.
Please do.
Okay.
So our third place getter for this category and all categories will be winning a copy of a novel by Nikki Sex. Nikki is an erotic fiction author who specialises in kink and taboo kind of story. So there's some interesting ones there for lovers of this genre.
Yeah, so I guess if you've done the 50 Shades of Grey thing and looking for something different, look up Nikki Sex.
Yeah, look her up on Amazon or click the link in the show notes to find out more about her. And the person who will be receiving that novel for the kink and taboo category and the person in third place is... Who Says Attending Your Mum's Work Party Has to Be Boring by Jordan Dove. Now, and it certainly wasn't boring.
Oh, it was not boring.
This is a story that to me pushed so many boundaries and so many limits that it deserved a spot on the podium.
I think it had one of the most discombobulating lines of the entire competition, a line that you read and you're like, your brain just implodes on itself, I feel.
Yeah, and that line was, I feel Mum's hand firm against the back of my neck, pushing me down. I sink to my knees as she pulls out her hardening cock. And this is a story with so many twists and turns and things are not what they seem. But like at its core, it is just a hot sex scene at a work party. And I think that's something that we can all
aspire to.
We can all get on board with.
I think it's what they call faux-cest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's a specific genre of kink, I guess, that is not incest. It's kind of like borderline and it's when we're pretending. And that's what this story was all about. And, you know, like that idea on the surface grosses me out big time. But in this particular story, it's really hot. Like it's brought in a way that just feels fun and crazy and not problematic in a way that would distress me, I suppose. Not that that matters. But yeah, super, super spicy, quite funny as well. This story, shocking and memorable.
Definitely memorable. So well done, Jordan Dove, with your story. Now, we're not going to read your story out on this episode, but I feel like this is one that we might consider for a future little Patreon bonus.
Absolutely. And it's certainly one that we will have to feature in our collection as well.
Okay, but now let's move to the moment we've all been waiting for, which is the read of the second place story. So the second place story will win a bottle of wine, as will all of our second place getters. And that comes to us from Naked Wines, who are sponsoring Flesh Fiction, and Naked Wines offer a range of select wines. So if you are a drinker, as Amanda and I are, please do check them out.
Their link absolutely. They deliver it straight to your house. So that's pretty cool.
They delivered it straight to my house.
And you saved some for me, which was nice.
It wasn't all gone by the time you got here. That's right. But for the kink and taboo one, we've selected a toy that is very appropriate, and that is a tentacle drool gag. So do with that what you will.
And so the tentacle drool gag comes courtesy of Odyssey Toys, who donated a range of spicy prizes for our competition. And a huge thanks to all of our sponsors, because this would have been way less fun if we didn't have all of these prizes to dish out. So thank you so much. And we do hope you'll support them.
So in second place, and the recipient of both of those lovely prizes, is a story I'm really looking forward to you reading.
Oh dear, I'm uncomfortable already. And in fact, this story features my brother's name, and I feel like I need to editorialize and just change that. Am I okay to just change that one name? Just to get through it. No. Just to get through
This is that faux
No.
Just pretend it's a different person with the same name.
I mean, I do know other people with that name. Okay, good. All right, I'll imagine the other. Wait, no, that's no better. I mean, it's better. Anyway, clearly I'm uncomfortable already. This is a very triggering story for me, but I'm looking forward to it.
But it's hot.
It's pretty hot.
So we hope you'll enjoy.
So without further ado, our second place story for the kink and taboo category for the Not Quite Right prize for Flesh Fiction is Planning Day Gameplay by Juicy Fruit. It was a single-player game I like to call, What Would This Person Look Like Going Down on Me? Angus from IT, sitting to my left, was the first. Angus, darling Angus, would have a plan for pussy licking. He would have thought through how he would hold me, how he would press his tongue and push his fingers. His serious face would eventually rise in victory, my soft inner thighs tingling from his stubble, my fingers in his hair aftershocks from a perfectly serviceable orgasm rippling through me. To Angus's left, cold shower Ryan from corporate, currently taking neat notes in his notebook, would have read about how to undertake cunnilingus and would be happy to demonstrate. I know exactly what to do, thank you very much, although the book said nothing about that spot or the mess. And have you come yet? You should have come already. That's what the instructions said. And to my right, Zoo. Zoo in sales with his thing for any woman who walked with confidence. You could hear it in his voice, the way he straightened, watched with adoring eyes. He would worship between my thighs, willing to lead, willing to follow, however he could serve his goddess. TBH, he leveled up in the game a while ago. I've been picturing him fucking me over his desk while everyone else is at monthly team morning tea. Lamingtons and good loving, am I right? It was a pretty good game, until it got out of hand. It started on slide 7. The facilitator dropped into my usual starting point. Sunday morning sunshine, a warm bed with tangled piles of doona and her taking a break from eating me out. Eyes peering up my belly, fingers still stroking just enough to make me moan, but not enough to make me pant. By slide 11, her face was back below eye level and I decided to make her a permanent fixture. By slide 13, it had escalated. Instead of lying on my bed, I was lying on the meeting table. Instead of watching the presentation, Angus, Ryan, and Zoo were watching me with varying degrees of interest, disgust, and lust. Instead of standing by the whiteboard with marker in hand, the facilitator stood between my legs, marking red ink against the soft flesh of my inner thigh as she pushed me open. Further open. Further. Further. I choked on nothing. You okay? Asked the facilitator, pausing mid-sentence, finger on her keyboard. She was still fully dressed and I couldn't remember her name, which was upsetting because something heavy and needy inside me wanted to moan it into her warm mouth. I'm fine, I managed to croak, although in my imagination I could feel the table behind my back and my dress bunched up, her chestnut hair falling into the crease between my stomach and my left thigh, and her nose pressing into me, inhaling, exhaling. Fuck, I tried to think instead of cold shower Ryan. The facilitator moved on to slide 14, toying with the red marker, turning it around and around, massaging the lid like she was going to ease it slowly apart, like I wanted her to do to my body. Ease me slowly apart so the longing could leak out. Lingeringly slow, leaking and lingering like a cloud of breath hanging in winter air. Her thumbnail continued circling the join between the lid and the barrel, flicking in and out, in and out, her knowing lips taking projections as I strained to keep my own projections under control because they were firming up. Yes, firm, so fucking firm. I should have been mortified, except I was too wound up in the creeping longing to care. Silence. More. Silence. I didn't hear the question and Her thumb, red from where she corrected a mistake on slide 5, scratched lightly at the lid as she waited for me. The ridged hush was like a promise. She flicked the join. Again. Oh God, I caught my breath. Maybe we can schedule that into Q2, Ash, said Zoo, smirking as he reminded me of her name and broke the standoff, like he knew what was going on in my head and he 100% approved. I needed to get out of the warm room that smelled of cologne and whiteboard markers and something spicy that I hoped was her scent, pooling where her prim thighs were bound tight by her skirt, but was probably me. Me, my body, being moist and warm and telegraphing I was in heat. Such heat. Zoo used his deep, knowing, boundary-pushing voice to suggest we take a bio break. The yes moaned out of me before I could stop it. Ash raised a perfect eyebrow, flicked the lid, flick, flick. I licked my lips, held her gaze, forgot to breathe. Ash finally let her chastising eyebrow drop, let the marker fall to the table with a plastic clatter. I bet it was warm, like her skin. I bet it smelled like her. I bet it tasted like her. The inside of my mouth tingled in anticipation of a taste, a meal, eating. 10 minutes, she said. Be back here in 10 minutes. And I was running for the bathroom before the others could even stand. I don't even lock the cubicle door, just leant against the grey Laminex, the hard, cool underneath my back like I'd imagined the boardroom table, and balanced one foot on the toilet lid. Dress pulled up enough to get my hand underneath and into my saturated knickers. The other hand curved inside my bra, catching on a firm projection and sending a shudder right through me. I closed my eyes, and Ash's imaginary fingers explored my folds, sliding across my most sensitive spots, dipping in deep and curling hard, beckoning to make me whimper. I moaned as softly as I could. And then her shoes sounded like authority and her perfume like intoxication. And she stopped by my cubicle, knocked. The sound, the slight bounce of the door reverberate through me. You didn't wait? Fuck. Frozen with my dress up around my waist and wrist deep in my knickers, her voice cut through to something primal, deep in my core. There were no words, and my mouth just hung stupidly open, like it was waiting for something to eat, or lick, or bite. Open up. I couldn't obscure a groan as I tried to deny that I was already open. So open and willing and heavy with longing. Open mouth and open legs and open folds. All open and ready to welcome her. My lips wouldn't close. Do it. And I did. I removed my fingers from my pussy, let my dress drop, and stepped away from the door. It swung inward, I didn't even see the marker in her hand until it was in my mouth, inserted sideways between my teeth, straining my lips wide and making me drool. I closed my lips over it, mouthed it, sucked to keep it in place. She pushed me back against the door, sat on the toilet lid, ran her hands up my legs, under my dress, and pulled down my damp, ripe knickers. They caught and tangled in their stickiness. Up. I raised my leg. She guided it over her shoulder onto the cistern. She leant forward under the canopy of my dress, and I felt her breath on my damp surfaces. Warmer, closer, fingers pulling me apart, opening me up, finding the hottest, most sensitive, most needy place in my desperate soul. My head rolled back and I whimpered. I had never ached like this, never felt such hot desperation. Never, never. I slurped around the marker in my mouth like it was flesh. When her tongue finally touched me, it was all I could do not to explode right then. I lost any fear of being overheard, and my whimpers grew into moans as she explored me. Wetness on wetness. I felt her fingers push inside, pull against my ridges, open me further. Her mouth found the sensitive spot to the left that made me gasp, and tortured it until I cried and shuddered and clenched and forgot how to breathe. The door banged against its frame as my standing leg lost its strength and I grasped for the walls. Whoa, fuck. As my climax faded, she rose from her cave, strands of hair plastered to the side of her face, and took the marker from my panting, leaky mouth. Her fingers teased where I pulsed still, sensitive and swollen. Then I felt it, smooth and straight and sliding inside. Deeper, deeper. She lifted my leg down from her shoulder and pulled my knickers up, holding the marker inside. I stood aside for her to straighten her hair, and it moved sensuously inside me. So smooth, so deep. Good girl, she said. Player 2 had entered the game.
So thank you, Juicy Fruit, for your story.
Very juicy.
And thank you, Amanda, for your reading.
Oh, jeez.
It was super hot.
Help.
There was so much to love about this story. First of all, the premise.
No, that is not to love. This is my life. I do that. That's
What
my
about
job.
this is your
This
life?
is uncomfortable.
Oh, you're the person up on the stage.
I'm the
with
person.
highlighter.
I'm the one with the highlighter. That's my day job.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I don't know if I consented to this. I mean, I did, but like no one asked.
I mean, look, a lot of us spend time in meeting rooms.
Yeah.
And I also have to say the word meeting had an extra connotation for me in this story. And then like the meeting table. I'm like, oh, meeting table.
Oh, this is a meat-free situation. This is a vegorama, if you will, a vagorama.
Yeah. Well, there's meat of various kinds of meat. But yeah, so I think that situation is quite relatable, like idle fantasies.
Yeah.
about people
Oh,
at
yeah.
work.
Mm-hmm. Can you not? I mean,
now that you've read this story, you're just fucking so defensive.
I'm
about
really
everything.
stressed. I mean, this is coming from someone who met her husband at work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I may have had one or two idle fantasies at work, to say the least.
I think it's probably a universal experience.
Depends where you work.
It depends where you work, yeah. So there's that. And then there's like the rushing off to the bathroom in the 10 minutes just because you're so aroused.
Is that relatable, is it?
You're
Go on, overshare.
Listen.
Overshare.
Can you be supportive?
I'm so supportive. How much action do you think the workplace bathrooms get? Is it mostly solo action?
I'd say probably a fair bit. But in this case, like it escalated beyond that, and then player 2 entered the
entered a
cubicle.
few different things, if you will.
And the whole marker thing as well, the whiteboard marker, was interesting.
Yeah,
Like
it was an
extra sensory detail, I think, that added to this story.
It was. And we've talked about in previous episodes about in the regular Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction, how we like that element of surprise. The element of surprise can be a lot of things, but basically it equates to something that kind of makes it stand out from the ordinary. Like a lot of stories are well written. So what makes this one feel fresh and special? And in this case, the whiteboard marker at the end was kind of that extra touch that did elevate it, because up until that point it was a spicy encounter, and then it's like a little bit of an extra level up. So I think that was a good touch, so to speak.
Yeah, it was a nice little touch. Yeah, so super hot story, super memorable. And thank you for sharing that with us, Juicy Fruit, if that is your real name. But we won't be reading the winning story for this round or any of our other category rounds during these episodes. We'll be saving them all up for the final episode, where we will reveal all of the category winners at once, as well as the overall winner of the Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction. So you just have to hang on a little bit longer. But if you can't wait, feel free to take a little trip to the bathroom. You never know what might happen. We'll be back very soon with the next episode. But until then, right on.
Or should that be right in?
Thank you for listening to Not Quite Right. If you'd like to reach us via email or follow us on social media, you can find all the links on our website, notquiterightpodcast.com. That's WRITE. And if you enjoyed the show, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcasting app.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
I'm getting really stressed reading these stories. I'm like, this is going to be bitten clean off. And I know, that's alarming. I know.
Look, is there anything I can do to make you feel less stressed? No, I didn't mean like that. I promise I didn't mean that. I'm just saying, like, can I, like, is it, am I, yeah.
No, listen, just stop. Anyway.
Relieve the pressure.
Oh, it's getting wildly inappropriate in here. Can you read a story, please? So awkward.